Welcome back, everybody. It is week 9 of Tailgate Talk, Class B, and that means playoff time. And no secret that Class B has been the strongest of the three classes in the Sun Journal Tri-County area, so we've got a lot of playoff matchups. Yes, that's where the power lies, baby. I'm Kalle Oaks. This is Randy Whitehouse. And speaking of power, Randy Whitehouse. He's gonna bring the power and bring the pain and tell us all about these three games involving Leavitt, Mount Blue on the east side and Mountain Valley on the west. They've been kind of in the middle of that Sun Journal top 10 for most of the year. Mountain Valley kind of had a hiccup at Wells late in the season, but they've rebounded nicely. Certainly, I think we're expecting to have one team in the state finals this year in B, and perhaps two again. What are your thoughts on where these three teams stand going into the playoffs?
I think they're all in pretty good position. Look at Eastern B, and Leavitt has been the clear number one this year, and Mountain Blue has been the clear 1A. Some folks consider him a clear 2, but we may discuss that a little later. I think Leavitt, no question about it, is playing his best football going into the postseason. I don't think there's any doubt about it. Mount Blue, they're obviously have recovered well from the loss to Leavitt. I think the biggest difference right now is the way the defenses are playing. Leavitt's defense has been very good the last few weeks, and that may be what ultimately sets them apart from everyone else in Eastern B. And Western B, saw Mountain Valley last week against Cape, and they still have some issues. Matt Hosey seems to be a little bit banged up. Didn't bother them last week. Ryan Doogie was able to pick up the slack in them more than some, and it may be a case of Wells may be bit by the injury bug with their quarterback McDonough. It sounds like his prognosis isn't very good for the playoffs, so that could certainly bring Wells down a little bit. And if that's the case, you got to consider Mountain Valley with their pedigree have as good a shot in Western B as any other team.
And you talk about Leavitt's defense, and I think the thing we got to remember is a lot of the points that the Leavitt defense allowed this year was not the starting defense.
Right.
It was absolutely garbage time. I saw another example of that last week against Gardner. Leavitt won 41-6. It could have been 60-0. I mean, it's and we're talking about the team that is probably the third best team in Eastern B that they were facing. The reason I bring that up is because the score when they played Morris the first time around, kind of deceiving. I believe it was 50-24, very much almost identical to the Mount Blue MDI score, which I think was 50-26 the same night. Yep. It's funny how those two teams have been kind of mirroring each other all season, and certainly no secret they're watching the scoreboard and seeing what each other does. The Leavitt defense probably remembers that game. I know they weren't crazy about Morris trying to score points against their second and third team defense. Maybe if not that Leavitt needed anything to light their fire for this game, but that might do it.
And for the coaching staff, there's a history going back for at least to 2008 when Morris knocked them out as the number 1 seed. Morris was, I believe, was the number 5 seed. Went on to the state championship game that year. So I bet the coaching staff remembers that a little bit. But that's You look at Morrison, they are a team that can put up some points. I mean, Kevin McKellar, the quarterback, is one of the top passers in the conference, and Devon Myers, an excellent running back. But no question Leavitt has a huge advantage on the offensive side of the ball as well. Over on the other side with Mount Blue and MDI runs a straight T, so you're talking about a team that is just a complete contrast to Mount Blue's Cougar gun. They'll run it pretty much every play except maybe 3 or 4 plays a game. They only put the ball up in the air a limited number of times. But they've been able to score some points this year with that offense, about 25 points per game. And they hung around with Mount Blue for about 3 quarters the first time. So be interesting to see if they try to shorten the game with their running game this week. I'm sure they will. How successful they'll be is another question. But I think that could be an interesting game.
The straight T at its core, the essence of it is a lot like the double wing, and the words double wing are profanity in Gary Parlin's vocabulary. The Mount Blue coach not really crazy about having to stop the double wing over the years, so I know MDI gave them a little trouble the first time. Let's look at Mountain Valley. They faced another team that didn't give them much trouble the first time in Spruce Mountain. 42-0 was the final, and it was over early after, I believe, a 96-yard touchdown by Matt Hosey, and that kind of just took all the starch out of that matchup. 7 versus 2 going up to Chet Bulger Field. Spruce has had a decent second half of the season, winning 3 of its last 4, but uphill climb for the Phoenix.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they've diversified their offense a little bit more the last few weeks. There's not quite as much pressure on Bill Calden as there was early in the season. That's been partially out of necessity because he's been battling injuries during pretty much the whole second half. but they certainly have their work cut out for them to try to score against Mountain Valley's defense, which was pretty uneven last week against Cape. Cape ran on them a little bit, especially in the second half. But you know that their defense is going to take it to another level in the playoffs, because that's usually what gets Mountain Valley as far as it goes in the playoffs, is the defense.
Mountain Valley's got to like the way their playoff tree is kind of set up. They've got Spruce, a team that they're comfortable and they've played, and then they would have Cape at home most likely, whereas Wells has to deal with York, a team they struggled with last week without McDonough, and then potentially the hottest team in the in the draw other than Wells has been Westbrook the second half of the season, and they're in that 4-5 matchup with Falmouth, and Falmouth has a couple of offensive studs in Kingery and Coolene that could give any team trouble. So Mountain Valley's got to like its draw right there.
Yeah, I think they do, and I think, as Jim Aylward said to me the other day, it really doesn't matter if they're home or not. Their main focus is the old one game at a time, and in some ways I think they're better off going on the road to Wells, because they'll go down there with a chip on their shoulder. There's no question about it, and feeling like they have something to prove after getting beat fairly handily the first time. So, I would not at all count the Falcons out.
Pretty good chance that we'll be talking about the same three teams next week when we rejoin you for Class B Tailgate Talk. For Randy Whitehouse, I'm Kalle Oaks. Hope you can make it out to the games this weekend. We'll see you on the sidelines.